Thanks, Jewel, and thank you for hosting me and giving this opportunity for more about the cash ban bill to see the light of day. I'll be referring a lot to this publication, which I would like for you all to get a copy of, and Des has got some there. The headline is "Fight the Totalitarian Ban on Cash, Stop Scott Morrison and KPMG from Banning Cash to Trap Australians in Banks." And I have a PowerPoint presentation.
Do you want to drive it, or do you want me to drive it?
Let me get a remote.
Tell you the truth, I've never used it. It's my first time at the PowerPoint.
If you just tell me, and I can do it for us.
Okay, all right. Okay, so I've a bit about myself and the organisation I represent. I've been in the Citizens Electoral Council for just over 20 years. It's a 31-year-old political party, and we just changed our name late last year to Citizens Party, or Australian Citizens Party. So it's been a long time in the works, but maybe I shouldn't be surprised if you haven't heard of us, because we're never in the media unless it's a slander of sorts. I've represented the Citizens Electoral Council, or the CEC, 6 times, up in Mackay, which is Dawson, and that's where I knew Martin Bella from the Green Shirts, and down in Ford, in the Beenleigh area where I live. Also as a candidate for the Senate, which I first met Jewel in 2016 in the elections at the candidate forum here. 2019, all right. Okay, so just a bit about me personally as well. My husband and I have been married for 34 years. We have 4 adult children and now 3 grandchildren. So in the next image. Okay. So I'm just going to read from this. Have no delusions. The government has got your back, and you'll find out one way or another whether that's a play on the words. We're going to talk about these things tonight. The background and consequences of the GFC, global financial crash, since 2008. Stop the government's cash ban bill. What is it? What's wrong with it? What's bail-in, and how to save your deposits from being bailed in. Importantly, I'm going to talk about what we must fight for, not just what draconian legislation we have to defeat, but what have we got to fight for in order to get this country going. So we have 5 pieces of legislation ready to go, which I'll talk about towards the end, and what you must do to join the fight. The next one. So the Cash Ban Bill, the Currency Restrictions on the Use of Cash Bill 2019. It's commonly known as the Cash Ban Bill. It hasn't had much publicity in the media, and there's been a Treasury inquiry, and it's now in a Senate inquiry. So it has passed the lower house of Parliament. So Liberal and Labor voted for it, and it passed the lower house. I'll speak more on that. But it has to go through the Senate. So what has already passed is a bail-in bill to steal people's deposits in the event if there's a global crash. And the bail-in bill was called Financial Sector Amendment, Crisis Resolution Powers and Other Measures Bill. And we saw this coming for 5 years, but didn't defeat it on our own. But since it was passed and became law on 14th of February 2018, 2 years ago this month, we have had a lot more collaboration of institutions, former bankers, journalists, whistleblowers, people who worked in APRA and other bank institutions have come around us because they know usually they only come around us once they've retired because they've become on the outside and vulnerable like we all are. So we're on, can you just show me is that number 4? Okay, this is the bail-in. Yeah, I spoke about that. And that picture was taken from when bail-in was applied in Cyprus in 2013. The Bank of Lakia Bank and the Bank of Cyprus both went belly up, bankrupt, and everybody lost between 47 and 60% of everything, and they haven't got it back. That's their savings, super, pension funds, it's all gone. And that was determined, the way that the banks handled that reorganisation, that bail-in was the template. It was called the template of how they're going to organise a recovery for a certain sector of the banks in the event of a new global crash. So stay on that one. Yeah, stay on the previous one. We're on an urgent mobilisation to stop the draconian cash ban bill, called the Currency Restrictions on the Use of Cash, Bill 2019, which bans all cash transactions over $10,000 and makes you a criminal if you do so. The penalty for breaking this law is 2 years jail or $25,000 fine, and the legal principle of innocent until proven guilty does not apply because the bill presumes without the need of proof that you are a criminal. The global accounting firm KPMG that headed the Black Economy Task Force in 2017 and recommended its passing, this bill's passing, has been lobbying for the cash ban limit to be reduced to $2,000, and that any such limit should be in the rules attached to the bill so that the limit can be changed by the minister without the need for a vote of Parliament. So how important is your freedom? Money is our path to individual freedom, and it's our business what we do with it. With so much surveillance around these days, we must remind ourselves and our children the importance of privacy. The cash ban, whether $1,000, $100,000 or $10,000 is a trap, whether we go to jail for 1 year or 2 years or even 3 days. We shouldn't have that as a potential for doing something that is currently legal and has thousands of years of history using our own money for our own purpose. So we shouldn't be overturning that. To trap us in the private banking system and make negative interest rates effective. Their greedy hands will be on our deposits, and if there's a global crash of the markets, it's all about to keep them propped up and the failed system, so-called, working. On October 24, 2019, the Morrison government showed its contempt, I'm probably moving too much, showed its contempt for democracy and parliamentary procedure by ramming the cash ban through the lower house, the House of Reps. They completely ignored Treasury's inquiry, of which 4,000 submissions were received, and denied the House of Reps access to those submissions. So politicians who voted for it weren't aware of the 4,000 public submissions against the bill, although not all of them would have been against the bill. KPMG certainly wasn't. The subsequent hearings in the Senate has uncovered another huge anomaly, that there was no regulation impact statement done. They did not follow the normal procedure with what they known as the RIS to find out how businesses would have to cope to implement the law. We must stop this bill in the Senate this week. We have until Friday, February 28th. So this week and I have up there on the table a list of all the senators in Queensland and other states, which if you've got a phone, you should take the photo of their contact details and make the calls tomorrow. Okay, the Senate report is handed down next week. On Friday, but the House of Reps meets again next week. This week, both houses are sitting. So this week, you're going to have the most impact by what you do, by making those calls. So some history to put things in perspective, because this hasn't just come out of the blue. The history of the financial crisis unfolding since 1971, floating of the American dollar off the gold reserve. In Australia, the privatisation deregulation frenzy started with the gradual sell-off of the Commonwealth Bank from 1983 to 1996 by Prime Ministers Hawke and Keating, and the subsequent collapse of productivity, farming and manufacturing. The rise of the derivatives gambling bubble, which led to the global financial crisis, and the so-called money powers' desperate measures since to save their dying financial system. So I'll go through what Kevin Rudd did to recap from 2007-2008 GFC. Remember the taxpayer-funded bailout? In Australia, it took the form of Rudd doing three things. First was a $900 helicopter money. I got it. I had children. Did anybody else get it in the room? $900? Do you remember what you spent it on?
My wife bought a sewing machine. I'm still waiting to get my clothes repaired. Lies, I tell you.
Well, I'm sure I'm not the only one, but I paid off my credit card. I thought it was like, phew, right? But so it's just a donation back to the banks. The second thing was tripled the first homeowners grant, and when the banks came crawling on their knees saying that they'd be insolvent sooner rather than later, end quote, he gave them an unconditional government guarantee. Thirdly, and he gave the banks that guarantee. You didn't get a guarantee, although they've been promoting a guarantee that you think your deposits are safe. Thirdly, he announced lowered interest rates to emergency levels, and it was then 7.25% in 08, and they brought it down 4% to 3.25%. This is emergency level. So what are we now at? That was 12 years ago at 0.75, so it's an emergency. And it won't stop there. The IMF, the International Monetary Fund, has recommended deep negative interest rates for Australia, while the Reserve Bank of Australia, the RBA, has also said it is prepared to go to zero and negative rates, and all options are on the table. That's a quote. Globally, since 2008, 27 trillion has been given to the banks through quantitative easing. Have you heard of that, quantitative easing? It's just printing money. That's what they do. Yeah. 27 trillion, which hasn't gone into the real economy for food security, water security, energy security. No new towns and cities have been built with the accompanying infrastructure. No physical thing has been built. Maybe a toll road, toll tunnel, toll bridge, but no new towns or cities. We haven't advanced the development of the nation. And since Valentine's Day 2008, bail-in has become law in Australia, meaning that if there was a new GFC, your money will be confiscated to prop up the failed bank unless you take it out before they do. And that's what they're worried about. To recap on the Banking Royal Commission, despite the limited terms of reference, the Hayne Royal Commission into the banks proved that banks practiced control fraud, and the criminal culture in banks was endemic. They represented the interests of the customers. They took money from dead people, signed up disadvantaged people to loans they couldn't afford. The recommendations to tighten lending standards have since been dropped. Treasurer Josh Frydenberg, I call him, and Prime Minister Scott Morrison have since begged banks to ignore the sound lending standards recommended by the Royal Commission and loosen their lending to mortgages again, which they've done. And the Australian Banking Association proved that they took no notice of the Royal Commission. They rewrote their code of practice, but in such a way that next time they won't be reprimanded because they've deleted any accountability towards fairness and duty of care to the customer from their code of conduct. So the next image. Yeah, this one. Okay, yeah, that one. Sorry. So we have the official reasons for the cash ban. Number one, eliminate the black economy. 2, reduce tax evasion. So the first one, what is the black economy? Well, that's only part of a graph. There was 158, this is from the IMF, right? And it was a study done by Medina and Schneider, the shadow economies around the world. And it says there, Australia has the 10th smallest black economy in the world. Countries with cash restrictions have much larger black economies. And I don't know if you can read it, but number 1, the smallest black economy is Switzerland, believe it or not, United States, Austria, Luxembourg, Japan, China, Singapore, the United Kingdom, New Zealand, and then Australia in the yellow. And then it says Germany, France, Denmark, Sweden, Spain, and Italy, although that's not in total numerical order. It's in the right order, but there's a lot of other countries not represented because they all have greater black economies. And what it's about, so I'm just going to explain what a black economy is. The black economy includes tax evasion, money laundering, underpaying wages, fraud and counterfeiting, illegal gambling and drug trafficking. The 10,000 cash ban was recommended by the 2017 Black Economy Task Force report written by former KPMG boss Michael Andrew. However, and he was an Australian, he passed away a couple of months ago. However, of 158 countries, Australia has the 10th smallest black economy, smaller than countries like Denmark, Norway and Sweden, whose black economies expanded when they started going cashless. So those countries above Australia have already gone cashless. Japan is the country that uses the most cash, and it has a way smaller black economy than Australia, the 5th smallest in the world. And then the other one, to reduce tax evasion, I'll just read it out there. The size and development of the shadow economy over the period from 1991 to 2015 in Australia. The source is an IMF working paper, Shadow Economies Around the World. I'm probably in the way. What did we learn over the last 20 years by Leandro Medina and Friedrich Schneider, January 2018. So you can see that is Australia's black economy, according to the IMF and the study that they did. So it's reduced by half over the 20 years. So what is the next? Oh yeah, go to the next one, because this is related. Australia's black economy officially has halved since 1991, and it's got Australia, Denmark, Norway and Sweden. And it goes from, it's just another way of representing the same thing. From 1991 to 2015. So are we up to, what's the next image? Okay. All right, so now I'm going to play two short videos. One is 5 minutes long. The first one is 5 minutes long. The second one is 7 minutes long. And they were taken from the cash ban hearings. There was a hearing on the cash ban in Canberra on the 16th of December, but they only told people about it after 5:30 p.m. the day before on the Friday. I'm not sure if it was a Friday or Saturday, but the hearing was the very next day, right? So you couldn't get there if you wanted to, and then they didn't advertise widely that it was on. And there was a big backlash over that, and we made sure a lot of people knew about it, and therefore they tried to I won't say cover their ass, but they tried to write it by say, okay, we'll have another cash ban hearing on the 29th of January. And then they changed the date to the 30th of January. So this first one, Alex Gallagher, he asked questions of the Reserve Bank of Australia, Australian Tax Office, AUSTRAC, one of the bank regulators, and Treasury at the Canberra hearing. So, mind playing that, please? Yeah.
Isn't Gallagher,
No idea. Other videos.
hasn't he got 6? That's what I heard. That's unfortunate, isn't it? He was quite good on the committee there, actually, the questions he was asking. Gallagher was good.
Yeah.
No?
Which is the first one? Sorry.
The 5 minute one.
Just case anyone's interested, you can see all of the Senate hearings, everything on the government website. You can watch it all your own. I know it may not be
on YouTube.
Yes. I did episodes where we watched these and commented on them. I know it's not the most exciting thing, but it's good just to see the senators actually asking common sense questions to some of these people that are coming there, and it feels like I'm watching an episode of Yes Minister with all the civil servants there not knowing how to answer.
So,
That'd be right.
Yeah.
That is speechless.
Is this the right one?
Australia's biggest tax
this is
offenders
all right.
don't
This is the
use
second one.
cash.
Okay.
You want the other?
The first one first, please.
Gonna move.
We're going to have to go into your time for Q&A because we're running out of time.
Okay.
Australia's biggest tax
This will
offenders
do.
don't use cash.
Sorry.
It's all right. We'll play this one first.
The Morrison government says its $10,000 cash ban bill is intended to stop people avoiding tax. Which people? The cash ban was recommended by the former global boss of accounting giant KPMG, who chaired the Black Economy Task Force. His report called tradies, hairdressers, nannies, gardeners, personal trainers and other small business owners who use cash the problem when it comes to avoiding tax. KPMG is one of the big four global accounting firms, alongside PricewaterhouseCoopers, Ernst & Young and Deloitte, which manage the tax affairs of multinational corporations. Their local association, the Chartered Accountants of Australia and New Zealand, testified to the Senate's cash ban hearing on the 30th of January that small businesses who use the untraceable nature of cash avoid $7 billion in tax. The Black Economy Task Force report attacked a common belief of small business owners who avoid tax, who say, "The big end of town does not pay tax, so neither should I." The report stated, "Using the poor tax behaviour of others to justify our own non-compliance is not an acceptable defence. If it is wrong for multinationals to be evading tax, that same judgment should apply to all of us. As a society, we expect all taxpayers to pay their fair share regardless of the actions of others." Really? Do the government and Big Four accountants expect all taxpayers to pay their fair share? At the 30th of January hearing, Centre Alliance Senator Rex Patrick asked the Australian Tax Office for information on who are the real tax avoiders in Australia. The government wasn't happy with his question, but the audience was.
This question goes to other areas where you could gain from enforcement rather than perhaps this area. You know, it's about the Parliament looking and saying, how do we balance off where the effort, the public effort should be applied. Now, I've looked at the tax transparency data for
That's already got to speak to.
I can cut it short.
Yeah, I can get right to
There are
the
at least 204 companies across Australia.
Q&A with you.
Over the
do
last
Q&A
5
together.
tax transparency years, generated more than $800 billion of tax of revenue and not pay a cent in tax. Okay, so you're doing something over here, you're proposing to do something over here, yet I think most Australians would find that a most unbelievable circumstances. $800 billion.
I'm not sure there's a question there.
No, I'm going to the question. So I want to get some understanding of the effort you're putting into that part of tax avoidance, because I can't see how these companies are operating, because most companies, they can have a loss, but you would expect them to at some stage generate a profit.
I think you're drawing a very long bow away from this legislation. I'm happy to let the officials answer that if they think that they can, but
Chair,
it's a long way from this legislation.
on one vote, in fact, two votes in the Senate deciding whether or not we put this into legislation. So
I'll take a sterling for granted, eh?
He's generally with me, so
I'm happy. I genuinely, I think it is stretching the bonds of the scope of this legislation. I'm happy for the official order.
what you are doing in addition to just simply receiving a tax return. Amcor Limited, $16 billion in the manufacturing sector, no tax paid over the last 5 years. BAE Systems in the defence sector, $6 billion of revenue over 5 years, no tax paid, not a cent of corporate tax paid. I'll give you a few more just from different sectors. ExxonMobil, $42 billion. These are rounded down of revenue, no corporate tax paid. Ford Motor Company, $14 billion in the transport sector, no tax paid. A couple more, Vodafone Hutchison Australia, $18 billion of revenue in the communications sector, no tax paid. Wilmar Australia Holdings Limited, $8 billion in revenue over the last 5 years, tax transparency years. It's in the sugar industry, no tax paid. I'd like you on notice to come back to the committee and say, for each of those companies I've named, these are the enforcement. We've looked at these companies in these ways over those 5 years. And to be very clear, I'm not asking for what the results of that information is. I want to know what you, the tax office, has done in respect of that tax revenue that has not been collected.
Certainly happy to help with that. I think possibly even the confirmation of particular taxation interaction with any of those entities of itself is a potential breach of the secrecy provision.
I think it is a very important oversight process, and the Tax Commissioner and I have run up against each other, and if I need to take to a Senate chamber to get an order, and I need to twist the government's arm, and I don't mind if you return that information to the committee in confidence. It's a government-controlled committee. I'd hope that sort of information is not breaching any privacy laws.
Absolutely, we'll do everything we can to satisfy your question.
Oversight of the tax office, understanding what you're doing about all these companies that don't pay tax.
I'm in no way saying it's not a legitimate question, Senator Patrick. I think it's a little bit outside the scope of this inquiry. However, order.
Who manages the tax affairs of these big corporations that didn't pay tax on $800 billion in revenue in 5 years? KPMG and Big Four global accounting firms which are pushing the cash ban. This law is a sham. Call your senators this week to demand they stop it.
Okay. And there's one more, and then I'll just finish up.
Okay. Can I suggest that can you just finish up? And we have Florian.
All right.
And Q&A, and then
Okay.
we can play this right at the very end.
Okay.
This second one.
All right.
Because we're running out of time.
All right. Can we go to the next image?
What is the...
No, not that one. The next image. Yep. Who benefits? Who benefits? Okay, we'll go through that. I mean, we can. Sorry, who benefits from the cash ban? The banks and the corporations that want to introduce the new payment platform, the Indue card. So you'll see there's a lot of banks in that as well. Next image. I've made a list of things that you should mention to your MP or your senator. Why? These are very good reasons for defeating it. Cash is legal tender, personal freedom, privacy. Cash is instant. Technology glitches happen. Elderly and naive should be protected from fraudulent banking practices. 2 Senate hearings showed no evidence for the cash ban. No regulation impact statement. Debanking happens where people can be written off by the bank and then they don't have a choice. Banks would have a monopoly and can charge extortion. IMF and the Reserve Bank project negative interest rates. Negative interest rates and bail-in can't work if cash is available. KPMG, the authors of the bill can't be trusted. And the very last slide is our 5 pieces of legislation ready to enact. So if there was a crash tonight, the government could get their hands on this legislation. It's all ready to go. Some pieces have been introduced by Bob Catter, Pauline Hanson already. So it's a bail-in of the amendment to the bail-in bill to enshrine the protection of your deposits, and it's only 3 pages long, so there's no real room for loopholes or misinterpretation. A debt moratorium bill. This was done in the last depression in Australia. Freeze everything: homes, farms, banks, and businesses. So you don't have the homelessness. An audit of the banks bill. Bob Catter has introduced that. We wrote it, but he's introduced it last November. Separation of banks bills so that you keep the pedophiles out of the kindergarten. They can't access your deposits in a crash. A Commonwealth National Credit Bank bill. We've written legislation for a government bank modelled on King O'Malley's original Commonwealth Bank from 1913. So we have it all material you want up at the table there. That's it. And
Oh, okay, thank you.
thank you.